I spent 8 years building a system worth nearly $1 billion only to be fired because I skipped the CEO's nephew's birthday party. Don't ever think you're more important than my family. The next morning the entire office was in chaos. You have 48 hours. The words hit me like a glass shattering on marble. You're done here. Declan didn't even blink as he said it, his smirk cutting sharper than the termination letter in his hand. Around the boardroom, no one met my eyes. 8 years of building the backbone of their empire, wiped out because I missed a party. I walked out numb, clutching silence like armor, unaware this was the spark that would ignite everything. Hours earlier, I sat at my desk, staring at an email that seemed harmless enough. Mandatory attendance. Declan's birthday gala. I stared at it for a second too long. The glow of the screen reflecting off my empty coffee cup. Mandatory for a birthday party? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't reply. I had no time for champagne toasts and hollow speeches tonight, not when the final line of code for a security algorithm worth nearly $1 billion was hanging on my screen like a heartbeat on a monitor. I'm Amber Calloway, lead systems architect, the woman they called the firewall with a pulse for 8 years. I gave everything to this company. Sleepless nights, weekends buried in server rooms, fixing vulnerabilities before anyone else even saw them, while others played politics. I built the shield that kept our empire from crumbling. Declan Ainsworth, on the other hand, built nothing. He's the CEO's golden nephew, parachuted into a vice president role with a resume thinner than the cocktail napkin his offer letter was probably written on. Charming, entitled, and obsessed with control. People whispered he had a short fuse and a long memory for anyone who crossed him. My phone buzzed against the desk, snapping me out of my thoughts. One missed call from Mom. A text followed. "Sweetheart, will you make it for dinner tonight?" My chest tightened. She'd been in and out of the hospital for weeks. I typed back quickly. "Tomorrow, just need to finish this push." It wasn't a lie. This update wasn't just important. It was critical. The algorithm I designed wasn't a product. It was the backbone of our global security network. If I didn't close this patch tonight, the next board meeting could be a bloodbath. Another notification slid across my screen. A Slack message from a colleague. Word is Declan hates anyone who skips his party. Says it's a loyalty test. I smirked. A loyalty test? I was loyal to the work, not the wine. I started typing a response when another ping landed like a warning shot. He was joking, or maybe not. "Careful, Amber." I glanced at the time, 9:40 p.m. I turned back to my code. The party would come and go, but this system, this was everything. What I didn't know then was that one unanswered invitation would cost me everything by morning. At 9:15 a.m., I walked straight into an ambush. The executive boardroom was colder than usual, its glass walls reflecting a skyline that suddenly felt foreign to me. Declan Ainsworth stood in the center like he owned the building, his tailored navy suit sharp enough to slice through air, a smirk playing at his lips. Behind him sat his uncle, the CEO, arms folded, face carved from stone. Neither gesture nor word came from him. "Amber," Declan said, rolling my name slowly like a taste he didn't like. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." I placed my hands on the back of a chair, waiting for context instead. Declan straightened his tie, eyes glittering with something that wasn't professionalism. It was triumph. "As of this morning," he began, voice steady and cruelly calm, "your employment is terminated. Effective immediately." For a split second, the words didn't register. Terminated. My mind scrambled for reasons. Budget cuts, restructuring, a project gone wrong. But he kept talking, every syllable slicing into me like paper cuts. "You've demonstrated a lack of commitment," Declan continued, "missing last night's event. Not a good look for someone in your position. We need team players, people who fit our culture." My throat burned, but I didn't speak. Around us, silence swelled until it pressed against my ribs. Culture. I had carried this company on my back for 8 years, built the algorithm that kept their entire global network from collapsing. I had been the firewall, the anchor, the last line of defense. And now, I was being erased by someone whose biggest accomplishment was throwing his own birthday party. I swallowed the heat rising in my chest. One word, one outburst, and I'd lose any leverage I might still have. So I smiled faintly even as the room tilted beneath me. But inside, panic coiled tight. Mom's insurance depended on my job. Her latest hospital bill had drained most of my savings. Without coverage, every treatment would bleed me dry. Declan must have seen the flicker in my eyes because his smirk deepened. He leaned forward, resting both hands on the polished table, and delivered the line that would burn itself into my memory. "Don't," he said softly, "ever think you're more important than my family." It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. A reminder that this wasn't about merit or contribution. It was about bloodlines, and I didn't share his. I gathered my things without a word. The chair's legs scraped softly against the floor, an ugly sound in the perfect silence. Declan didn't stop watching me. Even as I reached the door, his smirk stayed sharp as broken glass. And as I stepped out into the corridor, one thought detonated behind my eyes. "You just made the cost of loyalty unbearable, Declan, and you're about to pay every cent. The envelope was waiting for me like a quiet execution order. It sat in the middle of my desk, cream-colored, company logo embossed, my name typed in bold. Beside it, my monitor displayed a stark white screen with one cold sentence in black. Your access has been revoked. 8 years of building the strongest security system in the industry, erased with a single line of text. Around me, the office hummed with forced normalcy. Keyboards clacked, phones rang, but every pair of eyes refused to meet mine. People who once praised me for saving multi-million-dollar contracts suddenly found the floor tiles fascinating. Loyalty, I thought bitterly, was a currency that devalued overnight. I slid the envelope open. Termination agreement. 2 pages long. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the billion-dollar architecture I had designed. Just legal jargon and a final instruction. Return your badge by end of day. My fingers tightened on the paper, the edge biting into my skin, but I didn't let my hands shake. Inside, fire roared. Every late night, every holiday spent debugging code, every moment I sacrificed with my mother, they reduced it all to this envelope. I wanted to scream, to march back into that boardroom and throw the document in Declan's smug face, but I didn't. Outbursts don't win wars. Silence does. I packed slowly, each click of the keyboard echoing in my skull like a countdown. My colleagues whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. What happened? She didn't go to the party. A laugh somewhere behind me. I inhaled through my teeth and kept my eyes on the desk. The screen blinked again. This time, not from IT. A text slid across the corner of my phone. Unknown number. 5 words. Leave the building. Cafe 27. And then a name that stopped my breath. Jonas Wren. For a moment, the noise of the office blurred into static. Jonas, former CFO, architect of every major acquisition, the man who knew where the company buried its secrets. A year ago, he vanished after a quiet retirement. No farewell speech. No LinkedIn updates. Just gone. My pulse thudded in my ears as I slipped the phone into my bag. I didn't hesitate. Badge in hand. Envelope tucked under my arm. I walked out without a word. The elevator doors closed, sealing in the whispers behind me. If Jonas Wren was reaching out now, it meant one thing. My story wasn't over. It was about to turn into something no Ainsworth heir could predict. The bell above the cafe door chimed as I stepped inside, still clutching the envelope like evidence of a crime. Cafe 27 was nearly empty, save for one man in a charcoal coat seated in the far corner. His silver hair caught the morning light streaming through the window, and when he looked up, his eyes were as sharp as I remembered. Jonas Wren hadn't aged so much as he had hardened. "Amber," he said, rising just enough to pull out the chair across from him. "Sit." I lowered myself onto the seat, heart pounding against my ribs. Jonas Wren, the man who once signed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, who vanished overnight with whispers of a fallout that no one could confirm. And now, here he was, staring at me like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. "You're wondering why I called?" he said, voice even, deliberate. I nodded because words felt too fragile. He leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. "Before I walked out of that building a year ago, I set something in motion for you." My breath hitched. "For me?" Jonas smiled faintly, like a man savoring the punchline. "When you started building that algorithm, I knew its value, and I knew the people in charge wouldn't protect you if politics got ugly. So we built a safety net." I stared at him waiting for the catch. "A trust," he continued. "One that holds an LLC, Calloway Innovations. 6 months ago, you signed papers under the radar. Remember? Buried in the compliance stack I gave you." I searched my memory, and then it hit me, and it that stack of legal documents Jonas insisted I review late one night. I thought it was routine IP protection. "If you ever left voluntarily, nothing changes," Jonas said. "But if you were removed without cause, the LLC assumes full ownership of your work. And guess what?" Declan just triggered it. The room tilted. My throat went dry. "You're saying?" Jonas reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small silver USB, and slid it across the table. The metal glinted like a loaded gun. "Your system, your patents, your licensing keys," he said. "All of it belongs to you from this moment on. The company just shot itself in the foot." I closed my fingers around the drive, its weight electrifying in my palm. Jonas leaned back, eyes gleaming. "Declan thought he humiliated you. Truth is, he just activated the clause we've kept buried for half a year." For the first time since this nightmare began, something inside me flickered back to life. It wasn't rage anymore. It was hope. Sharp, dangerous hope. The cursor blinked on the screen. Steady as my breath, at least on the outside. From the corner booth of the cafe, I logged into a secure terminal and completed the transfer. 1 digital signature, 2-factor authentication, and 8 years of my life slid from their servers into the vault of Calloway Innovations, the LLC Jonas built to protect me. It was clinical, almost boring, but the weight behind that click was seismic. The algorithm wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. A gust of chatter filled the cafe as 2 baristas swapped gossip near the counter, but I barely heard them. My phone buzzed with notifications, emails, Slack messages, fragments of disbelief traveling at light speed through the company. Did you hear? They fired her? The Amber Calloway? She practically built the backbone of our system. What were they thinking? I scrolled past the noise, my thumb steady while something volcanic churned underneath my ribs. My badge might be dead, my desk abandoned, but in a way, I'd never been more present. Another ping, this time, a social media post. Declan's smug face filled the screen, crystal glass in hand, laughing with two executives like they'd just conquered Rome. The caption read, "Leadership is knowing who truly matters." Next, chapter, Sacker family first. My jaw tightened. I stared at his words until they blurred, a bitter laugh curling in my throat. Leadership? Declan couldn't lead a line at a coffee cart. He didn't even realize the empire he was gloating over had just slipped through his fingers. I exhaled slowly, letting the fury simmer under a veneer of calm. Rage is a weapon, but only if you know when to draw it. Right now, my job was to stay invisible, methodical, patient. Then it happened. A soft chime from my laptop, followed by a string of alerts cascading like dominoes. At first glance, they looked routine, license notifications, but then the subject line hit me like music. System alert. Deployment license expired. Please contact Callaway Innovations to renew. The email wasn't just in my inbox. It was in every executive's, every VP, every director, every stakeholder who believed today was business as usual had just learned their flagship system was frozen in place. No updates, no patches, no expansion until they came knocking on my door. I closed the laptop, slid it into my bag, and took one last sip of lukewarm coffee on the surface. I was calm. A woman finishing her drink before heading home. Inside, I was a storm biding its time, silent for now, but ready to tear the walls down while I savored a quiet corner table and the last bite of a blueberry muffin. Chaos erupted 13 floors above me. The boardroom that once radiated power was now a pressure cooker. The CEO's voice thundered against glass walls, rattling pens in their trays. Declan stood rigid beside him, his bravado from last night's party curdling into panic. Sweat beaded at his hairline as the head of IT stammered through a slideshow filled with red error screens. All global deployment functions are locked, the IT chief said, throat bobbing. Every node requires a renewal key from Callaway Innovations. His eyes flicked toward Declan and dropped just as quickly, like the name itself was radioactive. Declan slammed a fist on the table. She can't do this. She signed a standard work-for-hire agreement. The general counsel adjusted her glasses, her tone slicing through the room. Actually, she didn't. Amber negotiated an IP carve-out clause tied to performance benchmarks, and she met all of them. Without her signature, you have no enforceable claim. The CEO's face blanched, then flushed an alarming shade of crimson. We paid her salary. We funded the infrastructure. That system belongs to us. Not according to the contracts, the lawyer replied coolly. And the patent filing, already approved under the LLC, legally. They own everything. A silence settled, thick as smoke, broken only when the CEO roared, "Get Jonas Ran on the phone. He'll know how to unwind this." Across the room, a junior aide scrambled to dial. Speaker mode crackled to life with a single ring. Then a voice, smooth, measured, unmistakable. "Jonas Wren speaking." "Jonas, thank God," the CEO barked. "We've got a situation with Amber. We need you." Jonas cut him off. His tone chilled steel. "A situation you created." Declan's head snapped up, color draining. "Jonas, listen." But Jonas didn't. "Here's my advice. Wish your legal team luck. You'll need it." A beat of silence. Then the click of a call ended. The CEO stared at the dead speaker, mouth working soundlessly, until the truth settled like a guillotine. The man he trusted had just aligned with the woman they cast out while they spiraled. I leaned back in my chair at Cafe 27, scrolling through emails. More alerts confirmed what Jonas promised. The system was locked, airtight, waiting on my terms. My reflection in the cafe window looked calm, almost serene. No one could see the storm underneath, the one I'd learned to wield like a blade upstairs. They were screaming. Down here, I was smiling. By mid-afternoon, the company thought they'd found a lifeline. The emergency legal team crowded the boardroom, stacks of paper and open laptops littering the polished table. Declan sat at the head now, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up like a man on the brink of triumph or desperation. "We have a path," the general counsel announced, her voice carrying a note of brittle optimism. "If Amber hasn't filed a patent, we can submit an emergency application given the system's commercial value. We could argue prior ownership through investment and resources. It's risky, but it might work." Declan's grin split wide, smug and sharp. Finally, someone earning their paycheck. "Do it. File it now." Phones buzzed, keyboards clattered, and for a moment, the air in that glass tower tasted like victory or what they thought victory felt like. Declan even laughed, a brittle sound that tried too hard to drown out the morning's panic. "See? I told you. She's smart, but she's not invincible. We'll bury her in paperwork before she can blink." If only he knew. At a quiet corner table downtown, I sipped my coffee as my phone vibrated. A push notification slid across the screen. Simple, but devastating for them. USDO filing confirmation. Patent number 1,190,847 approved. Registered under Callaway Innovations LLC. I smiled. Slow and steady. Approved 2 weeks ago. Long before Declan even planned his little party, Jonas and I had built this net tight months in advance. They weren't chasing a loophole. They were sprinting toward a brick wall. Seconds later, another alert lit up my screen. This one sweeter. Emergency filing rejected. Existing registration on record, somewhere above me, in that sterile glass box. I imagined the moment hope curdled into fury. I pictured Declan reading those words, his victory speech dying in his throat as the weight of failure slammed down harder than gravity. I opened a secure chat with Jonas. They tried to file. I snapped a photo of the confirmation screen, captioned it with 2 words, already ours. Jonas' reply came fast. Beautiful. Let 'em twist. Time to move to phase 2. I closed the app, slid my phone into my bag, and stood. Every movement. Calm. Deliberate. They still thought this was salvageable, that a last-minute filing could save them. Let them. False hope was its own poison, and I had no intention of taking the antidote away just yet. For the first time all day, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because I'd won, winning would come later. This was better. This was watching the other side celebrate on a battlefield they didn't realize they'd already lost. The email came through as I stepped out of the cab. Subject line, strategic opportunity. I opened it while the city roared around me, horns and footsteps blending into white noise. A major competitor, Helix Dynamics, wanted a meeting. Their tone was polite but urgent. They'd reviewed the public filings for Callaway Innovations LLC and were prepared to discuss a licensing deal in the mid-9 figures. Hundreds of millions for what the Ainsworth family thought they owned. I didn't hesitate. 10 minutes later, I confirmed. Time and location, the Grand Meridian Hotel. Ironically, the same 5-star palace where Declan threw his victory party just 7 days ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside, the lobby gleamed like polished gold, marble floors echoing under my heels. Chimeras flashed near the entrance, financial journalists sniffing around after rumors of unrest at Ainsworth Global. I let my coat fall across my arm and walked with purpose. The photographers didn't know my name yet. They would. Helix's CEO greeted me in a private suite overlooking the skyline. Miss Calloway, he said, extending a hand. We've been watching your work for years. What happened this week? Their loss? Our gain. I smiled, small and controlled. I'm not here to talk about the past, I replied. I'm here to talk about numbers. Negotiations began. Calm, measured, everything in writing. While lawyers scribbled notes and analysts crunched figures, I drafted an email on my phone with the same steady hands I used to build firewalls. 2. CEO's address. Subject, license renewal offer. Body, you have 48 hours. After that, the value of your company begins to evaporate. Choose wisely. I hit send. No threats, no drama, just a deadline and a truth they couldn't outrun. Across the suite, Helix's lead negotiator slid a term sheet toward me. Initial offer, $320 million with options for expansion into 3 continents. I traced the bold numbers with my eyes, but kept my expression neutral. Control wasn't in the reaction. It was in the restraint. We'll review, I said, standing. But know this, I'm not in a rush. The longer this drags, the more leverage I have. When I left the suite, reporters swarmed near the elevators, their lenses clicking like gunfire. Someone whispered, "Is that Amber Calloway? A question today, a headline tomorrow." Outside, the evening air bit cold against my skin. But inside, I burned steady, a controlled flame no one could extinguish. They thought they had humiliated me. Instead, they handed me the weapon, and now I intended to use it with precision. They walked in like men still pretending to own the room. The CEO's stride was stiff, his jaw locked tight. Beside him, Declan looked pale beneath his perfect tan, his arrogance reduced to a fragile shell. They spotted me at the center of the conference table, calm, poised, a glass of water untouched at my side. Jonas sat to my left, legs crossed, his presence radiating the quiet power of a man who knows the ending before anyone else does. He didn't rise to greet them. Neither did I, Amber, the CEO said finally, voice tight as wire. We're here to make this right. I tilted my head slightly. Right for whom? Declan leaned forward, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Look. Let's not drag this out. We're prepared to. Jonas cut in, his voice smooth and lethal. Sit down. It wasn't a suggestion. They obeyed. That, in itself, felt like victory. Jonas reached into his leather briefcase, withdrew a thick document, and dropped it on the polished mahogany table with a sound that cracked like a gunshot. The CEO flinched. Declan's eyes darted to the bold header, irrevocable trust agreement. Jonas spoke slowly, each word deliberate, savoring the silence between them. 6 months ago, this trust was executed under Delaware law. It holds one asset, Callaway Innovations LLC. And that LLC now owns every patent, every line of code you thought belonged to Ainsworth Global. The CEO's face drained of color. That's impossible. It's binding, Jonas said, his tone like cold steel. You signed the original carve-out clauses yourself. I advised you to protect Amber instead. You let nepotism make your decisions. His gaze slid to Declan. And for the first time, the boy who smirked at me across a boardroom looked small. Very small. This, Jonas continued, tapping the agreement with one manicured finger, is the price of arrogance. I warned you both. You chose family over competence, and now your empire bleeds from that choice. Declan opened his mouth, but no sound came. The CEO slumped back in his chair, eyes glassy as the math hit him. $940 million. Gone. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. My voice was quiet, steady. Every syllable honed like a blade. You didn't just fire me, gentlemen. You freed me. The CEO's breath hitched. Declan stared at the floor. And me? I sat there, serene on the surface, while a current of dark satisfaction surged beneath my skin. For the first time, they understood. I wasn't their liability anymore. I was their reckoning. The cameras flashed the moment I stepped into the room. The Grand Meridian's largest conference hall gleamed under chandelier light, its walls lined with journalists, analysts, and investors craning for a glimpse of the headline everyone had been whispering about. At the center of the stage, a long table draped in navy silk or a single plaque in crisp black letters, Chief Innovation Officer, Amber Calloway. I paused for a heartbeat, letting the weight of those words settle in. Then I walked forward, every step measured, every click of my heels echoing like punctuation marks in a sentence I'd been writing for 8 years. Across the hall, lenses swung toward me, firing in rapid bursts. A week ago, I was a ghost slipping out of my former office with an envelope in hand. Today, I was the story. I sat, smoothing the fabric of my jacket, and lifted my eyes to the cameras. Their shutters clicked like applause. I remembered Declan's voice, smug and venomous across that boardroom table. Don't ever think you're more important than my family. I let the memory linger for a second, then smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. You were right, Declan, I murmured under my breath, knowing the microphones might catch it. Family is everything. Yours just lost it all to me. At the podium, Helix Dynamics CEO announced the news, a historic licensing agreement. Final valuation, $940 million. My algorithm, the system they tried to erase me for, now stood as the cornerstone of Helix's global expansion strategy. My name, not theirs, adorned every press release, every investor deck, every headline crawling across financial tickers, and as if the universe had a sense of humor. One headline broke live on the screens behind us. The heir who sank a fortune. The photo showed Declan leaving Ainsworth Global's glass tower, jaw tight, suit rumpled, the weight of failure clinging to him like smoke. His arrogance had been their strategy, his pride, their executioner. I folded my hands on the table, feeling an unfamiliar lightness bloom in my chest. Liberation didn't roar. It whispered quiet, steady, undeniable for the first time in years. I wasn't defending something fragile. I was building something unstoppable. A reporter's voice cut through the Miss Calloway. How does it feel to hold the future of an entire industry in your hands? I looked straight into the nearest lens, my reflection glimmering in its dark glass. It feels, I said softly, like the beginning. The flashes erupted again, and somewhere deep inside, the storm I'd carried for months finally went still. I walked into that room thinking I'd lost everything. But sometimes losing what you thought defined you is the only way to discover what you're truly capable of. They underestimated me because I stayed quiet, because I didn't play their games. What they didn't know is that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Your worth is never determined by the people who fail to see it. You are not disposable. You are not replaceable. And when the world tries to write you out of the story, that's your cue to pick up the pen and write the next chapter yourself. If this hit home for you, if you've ever been counted out, doubted, or pushed aside, drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if you believe in fighting back with brains, not just noise. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their power isn't gone.